The Reds need a scrambler, someone who can stop the madness when it starts, and there are a couple of players who could step up into this role.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Reds. My name is Jeff Carr, and my guest with me, you might know him from his radio show, Mo Egger from ESPN 1530 is joining me here today. And I mean, we've been lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans. Mo's been a little bit longer than me, but we love the Reds. He talks about the Reds a lot on his show. I talk about the Reds every day here on this show. Thank you for making Locked On Reds part of your day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And on today's show, we'll get into some awesome ballparks that you need to see later on in the show. The perfect time to panic is not right now, but it's not far off. We'll discuss when that point is in just a few minutes. But I want to start first with who is the most likely candidate to step up as the scrambler for the Reds, because there are a few guys that are close. And quite frankly, Mo, I kind of want to workshop that name idea as well. It's something I threw out on yesterday's show. It's a cross-sport reference where more so focused on golf, the guy that can hit it into the bunker but still make par, something like that, because the Reds are doing a lot of mistakes. And while we want those to go away, I don't think they will completely go away. So they need somebody to step up and be the guy that fixes things when they go wrong. I don't think they have that guy right now, but I think there are a couple of candidates that are close. Who do you think is the closest to that role?
I thought the scrambler was the ride you were on when you called my show from King Island.
No, that was Orion. Orion,
oh, gotcha.
and the racer. So close to the scrambler. The racer's like right next to the scrambler.
So are you talking about like a team leader? Or is it that?
Kind of, because I think like Jonathan India was supposed to be that guy, but on the field, I didn't think he was that guy. I thought he was more of a vocal leader. I need somebody that like last night, the example that I'm using was Graham Ashcraft makes the goofy fadeaway throw to Jeimer Candelaria that was never going to work.
Right.
And then it just kind of felt like it kept snowballing. And then when the Reds came up to bat, there was nothing that happened after that. I need somebody to step up in that situation.
Okay. Can I nominate Tyler Stephenson when he comes back?
Yes, absolutely.
Longest tenured Red, to the best of my knowledge. I think a guy, and it's not going to happen this year because he's already missed so much time, but like if you were to do the non-Elly, non-Hunter Greene, most likely all-star, that was my nomination. I think a guy who it seems to me from where I sit has the respect of his teammates. He is, you don't want to say he never makes a mistake, but like he always feels like his head is in the game. It always feels like he makes the right play. It always feels like he's really prepared. It feels like he's come a ways as a defensive catcher, but the pitchers have always liked throwing to him. His at-bats are usually pretty good. Like that's when you brought this up to me, that's the first guy that I thought about, who has maybe a little bit more cachet than most on the team because he's been around for a while. Plays a position that you just naturally connect to leadership. And just watching him, and, he had his issues early in his career where he struggled to stay healthy, that sort of thing. And, we did the whole back and forth about should he play first base, which I was a proponent of and then quickly an opponent of. I think Tyler Stephenson can be that guy. I guess the question is, when he comes back, what should his role be? Because Jose Trevino offensively has been terrific. Austin Wynns deserves a place on this team. Tyler Stephenson is going to catch, but are you a little bit more inclined to say, oh, okay, he's coming off an oblique injury and we're kind of good behind the plate right now. Let's have Tyler DH a little bit more. Can he be the scrambler if he's not playing in the field? I'm asking more questions than I'm providing answers. But
I like the Stephenson pick because I'm with you. I think that outside of pitcher, the most important player on the field is the catcher. And you could maybe argue that catcher is even more important still. I think friend of the show, Bronson Arroyo, might disagree. But I like Tyler Stephenson, especially from a lineup perspective, because he's a guy that last year albeit his first half wasn't amazing, but he was still hitting the ball hard. It was just finding gloves. And that's happened for a couple of guys on this team, but there's not a whole lot of guys that are lighting up the proverbial, peripheral stats, all the hard hit contact and, the Wobacons of the world. We won't get into all that. But I think that Tyler Stephenson is the most well-rounded hitter on this team. And for me, I agree with you, especially since Spencer Steer is now in the field. And we're seeing him play pretty good defense at first base. He is kind of opening up the ability to move back to the outfield with his throwing and all that other stuff. You can keep him in the field and DH is open. And I don't think Jeimer Candelario is pushing Tyler Stephenson out of the DH spot right now. Now, May is coming, and he seems to love the month of May in his career. Don't know if that continues this year, but I'm hoping it does because he's been awful so far. But I definitely think that that's a good way to go about that while still keeping Trevino and Wins on the roster. My other guy that I was kind of thinking about for this, and I don't necessarily know that it's for the power, but it's for the on base. It's for the getting everybody going. It's T.J. Friedl.
Yes.
I think that he's a candidate up there. I'm not saying that he is above Stevenson because right now nobody to me has this role. But TJ Friedl right now has been quietly hitting 300. Like it feels like nobody's caring that he's hitting 300 leading off right now. Like we're all worried about the fact that it seems like Elly, while he has done well in the peripherals, is sort of underperforming a little bit. Want to see him step it up. Matt McLain, the batting average isn't there, but the on base and the slugging is. So you kind of want to see that catch up. And so everybody's talking about that. They're talking about Candelario. They're talking about the injured CES. And is he ever going to be anything that we want him to be? Stuff like this. And TJ Friedl's quietly just like, hi, doing my job. I think I got this.
Yeah, it's funny. He did get thrown out at second base trying to stretch a single into a double, but the game he had on Saturday, right? He went 4 for 4, if I'm not mistaken. And like hit the ball hard every time. And I'm going like, I'm watching the game on my patio and I'm going, I think he's having a better year than I realize. Right. And I think a lot of in the game on Saturday, because we are still so early in the season, skews the numbers. But I think a lot of us are guilty of that. Like I've beaten the drum for Elly De La Cruz to hit leadoff, but they got a guy who's batting leadoff right now who's doing the job really well. And so, all right, you want Elly to come to the plate as often as possible, but is it worth disrupting this thing at the top of your order, which is working? I guess what I would want to know is, can an outfielder serve in that role?
Because he's not seeing the ball in the field as much as an infielder would be. That's
right. So
that's true.
So like my favorite all-time player is Barry Larkin for a lot of different reasons. I love players who seemingly never make mistakes. I'm a huge UC basketball fan, right?
Right.
One of my top 3 all-time favorite players is Gary Clark. Now, most Bearcat fans are going to go, boy, Gary Clark was really good, but really, Nick Van Exel,
he's a problem.
Martin, I love it.
Yeah.
My thing with Gary Clark was he'd miss shots, he'd have bad games, but he never did anything he couldn't do. He never made a mistake. He never missed an assignment. He never threw the ball to the wrong guy. Like, I love players like that. And it's what drew me to Barry Larkin as a kid. Would he make a physical error in the field? Of course he would. Would he get fooled by a pitch at the plate? Of course he would. But like, it just felt like he always did the right thing on the field. And, I know you're going to have folks who hear or see this and go, well, what about the time he took the captaincy off his chest? One instance in an 18-year career does not move me. So I look for guys who are always in the thick of things, that have some degree of cachet, some gravitas with their teammates because of their experience, play one of those kind of leadership positions, and never really do anything to make you go, what are you doing, right? That was Barry Larkin for me as a kid. And then he would add to it, he could do some amazing things in the field and at the plate, but that's why he's my all-time favorite player. I'm not telling you that Tyler Stephenson is the Barry Larkin of catchers, but like I think of a guy like he plays a position that is in the middle of everything. He interacts with the pitcher, he interacts with the infield, and he is a guy. And again, is he a great catcher? No, But when you watch him, do you ever think like, Tyler Stephenson isn't prepared, maybe I'm overstating how good he is, but I think of players like that you watch on a daily basis, and you rarely get mad at them for things they're doing. You understand hitters are only going to get so many hits. You understand sometimes like the opponent makes a play on you, that sort of thing. But like, I want dudes who don't make mistakes in the field and don't make mistakes, give good at bats. For that role that you're creating, I'm looking for a Barry Larkin type guy. Tyler Stephenson, I'm not saying he's going to be an 18-year Cincinnati Red and be in Cooperstown one day, but he is what most closely resembles the player that I grew up idolizing.
I like that. And the reason, because I think that Elly should be the guy that we talk about, but that's the reason that Elly isn't right there right now. It just seems like he is one of the guys that is causing the mania. And hopefully he can evolve into the guy that fixes the mania. And I think he can, because he's otherworldly talented, but that's why I don't have him necessarily at the top where he should be. I think that's the expectation for him. So the question is, when it comes to things like that, when it comes to guys who are underperforming in some area, the numbers don't look great in some area, it's not quite time to panic just yet, but that might be coming close. We'll tell you why coming up next. Get the supplies that you need from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Whether you're into plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. And if you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for the trade pros looking for an extra edge, they have a free Trade Master program that offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Thanks for making Locked On Reds part of your day. If you are an everydayer, shout out to you. Appreciate you being an everydayer. If you're not, hit that subscribe button, become an everydayer, and join in on the conversation down in the comments section. All right, Mo, I appreciate you talking Reds baseball with me here on draft week. I know that you've really dusted off the mock draft and probably putting the finishing touches on it. But we've had someone kind of talking about who's the scrambler, who's the stopper. We'll figure out a better term for that.
And by the way, I feel like we should have included Gavin Lux in that conversation.
I think he's got an outside shot for sure. He's done a really good job getting on base, and he doesn't chase pitches. I think that's a big thing at the plate. And then defensively, he's fine. I wouldn't say he's a Gold Glover, but he's fine.
Right. Fine. Yeah.
And that's what you need. Yeah, and also Scrambler, you mentioned the ride to Kings Island. It also makes me hungry because I'm thinking about eggs. But anyway, I think the big part here now when you're looking at the team's big picture is, when can we worry? I get messages all the time. This guy needs to be moved down the order. This guy needs to be sent down to AAA, all this other stuff. And I'm like, guys, it's really early. Like, baseball is such a hard sport to evaluate on a microwave basis. There's got to be more patience when it comes to numbers for certain guys. I think that, as much as I want to see Will Benson succeed at this level, and he was very quickly given the whole, because I mentioned when you were talking about Gary Clark is a problem. The Reds sort of poured that over, at least Cincy Shirts poured that over and gave it to Will Benson. Now I'm kind of wishing they would have picked somebody else. But I would love to see him succeed. It's just they sort of know who he is at this point. These other guys, they know who they are too, and they're not. Spencer Steer is not he's not playing up to his level right now. Mm-hmm. Matt McLain, batting average, not playing up to his level right now, I don't believe. But we're kind of coming to the point where I think that, you've mentioned in the past, and I think I agree, Memorial Day is kind of that point where you're like, all right, I think we sort of know some things about these guys right now. That's why right now I'm not panicking, but it's not that far off either.
Yeah, it's 2 months. Memorial Day weekend starts early this year. So let me see if I can do this backwards. Memorial Day Friday is the 23rd, which means Thursday is the 22nd. So 22 plus 30 is 52 minus, that's 8 weeks. That's 8 weeks of a season. On the Thursday going, the season started on a Thursday. So that's 8 weeks. That's a pretty good chunk of time, man. It's a pretty good sample size where you could start to go, all right, this is who this player is, or this is what this player's season is going to look like. So I don't know that the right word is panic. I think it's when can you make a fair assessment of what they are, what they aren't, and what they need. And that's, as you and I talked, that's a month from today. Now, if between now and next week they lose 9 out of 10, well, we're not waiting to Memorial Day to panic. I could promise you that. But I think if you get to Memorial Day and it's like, yeah, they're still kind of treading water, which is what they're doing right now, there's going to be this like, all right, when are they going to turn it on? Because if they're going to have a stretch. And it was like the same time 2 years ago where, Memorial Day came and went. And then if I have the timing correct, Andrew Abbott came up, Matt McLain was already here. Then Elly came up. And then soon thereafter, they go on a run, right? Like, even with that run, they went 82 and 80. The idea this year is to go, what are we guessing? 87, 88 wins?
I'd say 88 wins.
Like, so you're going to need like at that point, if there's kind of where they are in a month, we're all going to be asking like, when's the run coming? And I've made the argument like it should happen now because they're healthy-ish. They're Stephenson's close to coming back. They don't have CES, but he wasn't helping anyway. Starting staff is intact. We can debate whether its current composition is what they should move forward with, and we certainly can debate whether the current composition of the bullpen is what they should move forward with. But I think you have to take advantage of like areas in the schedule that the league says to you, "Here you go. Here's some wins," and you have a better chance of doing that when you're healthy. So, I think on Monday I said starting Monday, their next 20 games were against teams that as of that moment had losing records. Now the Braves are better than their record. They're in that mix, but still there's a lot of Miami Marlin, Colorado Rockies, Chicago White Sox, St. Louis Cardinal, Washington National. And you're healthy. So, if they come out of this, 3-week run and they haven't made any significant headway, I wonder how much we're going to go back and kind of revisit that later. I also think there's a stretch, if I'm not mistaken, right before the All-Star break. I believe they play the Marlins and Rockies consecutively, or maybe there's a series with the Mets like wrapped in there too. But after the All-Star break, then it's a lot of Dodgers. I think they play the Padres there, and I haven't committed it to memory. But yeah, as a general rule, I think you get to Memorial Day, and that's like 2 months of stuff happening where you can, reasonably form some opinions based on a significant chunk of data, what their attributes are, what their weaknesses are, and what they need to get. I think the frustrating thing for me, Jeff, is on our show, at least, we have been talking about what they can get at the deadline since before the season started. Right?
Right. And you know what it is? It's the thing that they needed this past offseason. They needed last deadline, and they needed the offseason before that, too. It's an outfielder.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you. And yeah, you're right. The week leading up to the All-Star break is 7 games at home against the Marlins and the Rockies. That's why this week has felt a little bit frustrating, where the overall record is still manageable. We're not talking about 3-18, but losing 2 out of 3, and depending on what happens, we're recording this before Wednesday's game. Depending on what happens in Game 3 of that series, God forbid they get swept in Miami. That's a missed opportunity. And now they got to go into Colorado and they got to win there, which Colorado is historically a good team at home, regardless of their overall record. So the opportunity feels like it's now. I agree with you. And I've been saying since the beginning of the season, start fast, but definitely don't sink fast.
Yeah.
And if you don't start fast, which they didn't, but they also didn't sink fast either.
Yeah.
So I think if they continue this sort of, all right, we can do this for a little bit, we can do that for a little bit, and then they finally put it all together at some point, like I think they will, yes, we're going to see this team compete for the division. But you're right. Like Memorial Day is the point for me where it stops being when they put it together, and then it turns into if they put it together. And
Yeah.
there's not a whole lot of in-organization reinforcements that are coming up. Like at some point you might see Chase Petty and we'll see Rhett Lauder come off the injured list at some point, but it's not to the extent of 2023. And the trade deadline will be looked upon as like, all right, you didn't do anything for the past couple of windows when you should have. You should do something now.
Yeah, I've said all along, there's going to be a moment during the course of what they're doing, which started, if you think about it, really started after the 2020 season. This process that has culminated with a team in 2025 we hope can make the playoffs. There's going to have to be a point where they go, screw it, we're going for it. And as much as some of the individual offseason moves have paid, good dividends, it didn't feel like they did that this offseason.
No.
If they don't do it at this deadline, assuming they're in a position. Now, if they're, 12 under 500, different story. But if they're within striking distance and kind of stand pat again, that's not going to work. You talked about like they haven't sunk, and they haven't. But I think there's two things. Number one, there was this stretch in the first 24 games where it kind of felt like things were falling apart from a health perspective. And they kind of stayed afloat, which is a credit to their team. And if you want to say a credit to Terry Francona, but again, like Matt McLain, they dodged a bullet. He's back. Tyler Stephenson's hopefully no setbacks in Louisville, on the verge of coming back. Like they're, as baseball teams go, about to be pretty whole. And so I emphasize that you can't do the whole like, oh man, injury sunk this team, and then not emphasize the importance of winning when you're healthy. I think the other thing too, though, is at the beginning of every season, when you're coming off a disappointing year, you're looking for reasons to think, okay, this is different. Well, the record in one-run games is 2-5. Very small sample size, but why? What was one of the reasons why last year it didn't work out? They were bad in one-run games, 15-28, if I'm not mistaken. They were bad in one-run games. That was talked about so much during the offseason and so much during spring training. And again, 7 games. They could flip the script and have an above 500 record in one-run games, in 2 weeks. But still, that hasn't gone well. They're 0-2 in extra inning games, and neither of those games were decided by a run. So they're kind of effectively 2-7 in one-run games. Oh, and by the way, opening day was a 2-run game, but they had a 1-run lead in the 9th and lost. That Sunday game against the Giants was a 1-run game into the 8th, and then they made defensive mistakes. So, like, last year's theme was losing games that were there for the taking. And there still have been too many instances in a very condensed period where games that were there for the taking got away from them. And that's discouraging to me. That doesn't mean that trend's going to continue, but in the first month, we wanted to see some things that made us think this year is going to be different. How they performed in close games, for me at least, was at the top of that list.
I have a question regarding that close game thought that I'll ask you next. And then also we're going to end today's show by looking at a few fun experiences that we've had outside of Great American Ballpark. Fun way to end today's show. Coming up next. Man, all this baseball talk makes me want a snack, and you know what the perfect snack is? Wonderful pistachios. Wonderful pistachios provides you with that salty, great taste that you're looking for. Plus, they have all these amazing flavors. I got a bag of jalapeno lime right here. I had a bag of chili roasted before I got this bag, too. Great flavors. They've also got salt and vinegar, salt roasted, and even smokehouse barbecue, which I've heard is fantastic. And they're unshelled, so you just grab a handful and go. Plus, they've got the shelled kind in case you want to go through all of that as well. But they're packed with protein, and that's the big difference here when you're talking about a great snack, because it's also going to be healthy for you. Check out Wonderful Pistachios today. They're literally in all the grocery stores that I can think of. Probably a couple of convenience stores as well. I highly recommend them, especially when you're watching a Reds game. Great snack to grab for, and you're not going to break the bank nutritionally. go to wonderfulpistachios.com and check out the Snack the Packs Protein Punch and go get you a bag today at your nearest grocer. If you can't watch us on YouTube, you can always listen to us on your favorite podcast app. We're seriously on all of them out there. Go check that out. And check out Tim Daniel on the Reds postcast after every game. Sure, he's going to be ready to go for you here in Colorado. I mean, he won't be in Colorado, but when the Reds are in Colorado after the final out, check out the Locked On Reds YouTube page and on the Locked On Reds audio feed thereafter. Okay, so there's one other thing that I kind of wanted to add on to that, because you had mentioned the close games thing, and it's something that I've thought about here recently, listening to Tommy talk to Tito and listening to different folks around the broadcast and stuff like this, saying, man, this team is so close. They're playing these close games. They're losing these close games. They're so close. With it now being like a year and a half of this, are we done with that being a positive? Because in my mind, like I've heard the same thing for a long time now, that it's like, boy, just one more swing here or there, and this is an over 500 ball club. Like, I think for a typical ball club, that's okay. But for where this Reds team is right now, it's almost become a little bit of a trigger for me. Anytime, oh, they're so close. Oh, trigger. Oh,
I think it depends on your expectation. My take all along has been, if this year isn't about winning, then when is?
Right.
Right? I mean,
the peaks and valleys, right? Where's the peak?
Well, again, like, not to bring this up again, but I guess I have to. Like, this process, if you want to go back to the start of the decade, after the 2020 season, which didn't go the way anybody would have liked because of COVID and whatever, but
right.
After that season, they let Raisel Iglesias and Archie Bradley walk. Now, we can debate the individual merits of those moves and of those individual players, but that told you what direction they were going in. And I used to talk about this on my show, and people would go, oh, you're out of your mind. And I'm like, they're telling you what they're going to do. And what they're going to do is get through this coming season, 2021, and then start to unload guys. It's coming. That's why Dick Williams left. Whether or not it works is a different story, but they decided to go in a very specific direction. At the end of 21, there was a lockout. When the lockout ended, immediately they start trading away guys. The trade deadline comes that year. Miserable season. They lose 100 games. They trade away guys. Okay, fine. So now we're going to go forward with this plan, and to their credit, for the most part, they have stuck to it. The plan doesn't matter if there's not a payoff at some point. I've always felt like, even during the high points of 2023, the payoff should start to come in 25. Here we are. So I don't care to hear about how close they are. I'm not interested in, well, you know what? They're not quite there, but they're like, dude, it's 2025. Like,
yeah.
Isn't this nobody?
You shouldn't be close. You should be there.
You should be closer to there than, well, we're closer to there, right? Like,
right.
So it depends on your expectation. And I'm always struck by, when I say that, there are folks who are like, you know what? It's going to take a little bit more time, buddy. I'm tired of waiting. Like, Hunter Greene is in his prime, and Elly De La Cruz is here, and Matt McLain, and so I certainly don't think the Reds are World Series or bust. But if at the end of this season, we're still talking about a team that has the losses outweigh the wins, and having to hear about how, hey, you just got to wait a little bit longer, and hey, we're close. Man. And I think most fans feel the way I do. So yeah. I roll my eyes when I hear, because to me, Jeff, we're close means wait. And right. This is a theme I've touched on a lot, man. This is a theme I've touched on a lot.
Yeah.
The more you tell someone to wait, the less patient they're going to be. I've equated it. I've used two different comparisons. The one more people can relate to is if you go to a restaurant and they tell you it's going to be, 45 minutes before the table's ready. Okay, fine, we'll have a drink, right? And then like 45 minutes have passed. Maybe it's an hour. You go up to the host stand and go like, where are we at? Oh, it's going to be another like 20 minutes. Okay, well, you had 20 minutes, and then they come back like, hey, is our table ready? Well, actually, like at some point you're going to go, man, F this, I'm going somewhere else. And so
Just think about a double cheeseburger at that point.
yeah, like that's kind of, if you're a Reds fan, you've been told for so long. So when I hear, oh, we're close, that's just another way of telling a fan, you've got to wait a little bit longer. And if there's one thing Reds fans are justifiably tired of, it's waiting. So I have said from the get-go, I want to talk about the 2025 team in 2012 terms. Not that I think this team is as good, but I want to talk about this team. How do they win tonight? How do they win this weekend? How do they win the National League Central? What can they get to put them in a better position to win the National League Central? And judge everything this team does, positive and negative, against the barometer of win. Do they win? Are they competing for championships? If we don't start to do that, then what's the point? What's the point of a rebuild, of a plan, of a stockpiling? What's the point? And so
I 100% agree. And I even say that, like, if they go 83 and 79 or 84 and 78, but they still miss the playoffs, then they still miss the mark. Like, this team needs to be in the playoffs this year. And it's not about the record so much as long as the record gets them there, that's fine. But I'm with you. I think the time is now to push forward, because it just feels like we're in a car and we're like, are we there yet? And they're like, nope, almost there. And speaking of in a car, real quick segue to the end. We'll do a quick hit thing. I wasn't sure how much time we'd have for this conversation, but I just got the chance. I went to San Francisco, saw the Reds play the Giants.
Man.
That was a beautiful ballpark. And I'm not going to lie, they knock us out of the water on the food. I mean, oh my gosh, the food there. When you can get a crab sandwich where it's literally crab and I think maybe mayonnaise or whatever they put, but it's like crab and it's just, oh, that was great. The garlic fries, so phenomenal. But I was curious of you, because I had talked about San Francisco, so I don't want to rehash that for our everydayers out there. What has been your favorite non-Great American Ballpark experience?
Well, first of all, San Francisco's at the top of my list. I've never been to San Francisco. I'm dying to go to the ballpark. You know, whenever the Giants play at night, and obviously the Reds were just there, that place just looks beautiful.
There was still someone in McCovey Cove when we were there, and my wife was like, what's he doing? I'm like, he's waiting for a run.
So there's two categories. Even as a Reds fan, I love Wrigley Field. Now, I'm older than you, and I know there's a lot of folks who roll their eyes at Wrigley Field, and, you know, the ball writers don't like Wrigley Field because the press accommodations aren't very good, and I understand that. And they've done some things to it that I don't love. But if you're my age and you can still remember Wrigley before lights, or Wrigley when it had lights, but they barely played any night games, 2:20 every day, the Chicago Cubs were on WGN. Like, every year, my favorite memory of summertime, no matter what I was doing outside, at 2:20 every day, there was a baseball game on during the day. And I used to watch those games as a kid, and, you know, the rooftops were different. The rooftops were just places where the people who lived in those buildings would put a folding chair and a grill and sit there and watch the game. But I would watch that as a kid and go, like, I can't wait to go there. I can't wait to go there. I can't wait to go there. And then I started going every year, starting when I was 20 years old. And I always try to see the Reds, but there have been times like I just haven't been able to make it happen. I still go up to see the Cubs play. It's still my favorite place on earth. And still, if you sit in the bleachers, you could look toward home plate and get a sense of what it looked like in 1920. So Wrigley, and I know there's a lot of people who roll their eyes when I say this, Wrigley's in a category unto itself. Everybody's going to tell you Pittsburgh. I had a lunch yesterday with a guy who hasn't been to Pittsburgh yet. And he's taken his sons. Pittsburgh is awesome. And I know as a Cincinnati, you're not supposed to say anything nice about Pittsburgh. Downtown Pittsburgh's fun. And the ballpark itself is beautiful. So, and it's, you know, you can be in Pittsburgh in 4 hours from here. So I encourage everybody to do that. Above and beyond that, I'll say this. The new park in suburban Atlanta is really cool.
Yes.
Lots of stuff nearby. It's not in Atlanta. It's in Gwinnett County, but it is really, really cool. If you can get to Dodger Stadium, you should go. It's one of the most picturesque places. Now, the Dodger dog is painfully overrated. And it could be like, don't drive, take an Uber. Dodger Stadium is really cool. And then there's two others, and they're actually both in the National League Central. I'm a huge Milwaukee guy.
Do need to go there. I haven't gone there yet.
So everybody says what's unique about it is they tailgate before baseball games, and that's true. It's a neat park. You're going to see a game no matter what because of the roof, but when the roof is on, you really don't feel like you're inside. St. Louis is also really cool. St. Louis's park, the innards of it aren't great, but like if you're sitting kind of in the infield and looking out toward the city, it's really pretty. The ballpark village there is really, really nice. Those are probably my favorites. Philadelphia's park is really nice as well. I don't love what's going on around it. Philadelphia's pretty nice. Those are my favorites. And I'll tell you this, while I don't think the park itself is that much to write home about, if you can go to a game at Yankee Stadium and go to Stan's, which is the bar right outside, that's an experience in and of itself. I gave you a lot of answers there, but those are all really cool. Those are the parks that I've enjoyed. And like, I've been to Fenway's fun. Like, again, like Fenway and Wrigley are kind of like, those are tourist.
I put Wrigley above Fenway because I've been to both, and I'm with you. I put Wrigley above Fenway.
I agree. I felt like with Wrigley, I felt more like I was outside, and Fenway, you're just kind of boxed in. But Fenway's, neat.
Most uncomfortable seat I've ever sat in, I'll say that.
Yeah. Those two parks are sort of in a different category because of their history and their bucket list. I mean, if you're a baseball fan, you owe it to yourself to go to games in those two. But like among the other ones, you got to go to Pittsburgh, go to St. Louis, go to Milwaukee. Obviously, here in Cincinnati, you can drive to all of those. Dodger Stadium I went to, and I wasn't sure what to expect, and I loved it. So I could not recommend. But I badly want to go to San Francisco. I also really want to go to Washington.
Oh yeah, I haven't been there either. I want to hit them all. I got this map behind me of all the different stadiums, and I put a sticker on there whenever I go to one. So if you're like me, I'll put Mo's contact information in the description of today's show. He can be your travel agent, get you set up with the next stadium that you want to go see. But no, I'm joking. That's been my favorite thing. It feeds your baseball fandom. Even if you see the Reds at another stadium, it feeds your baseball fandom. And I love to go to other ballparks, and I encourage everyone that loves baseball to go check them out. But Mo, I appreciate your time, man. I thank you so much for hanging out with me here today. That's going to wrap us up for today's show. Thank you so much for checking out today's Locked On Reds podcast. You can always catch Mo on from 3 to 6 every day. I know he's going to be talking a little bit more Bengals here with the draft going on, but I know he'll slip in some Reds as well. And you can also catch Tim Daniel on the Reds postcast every day after the final out. And for your next listen, check out Locked On MLB Game Night. We've got every single game, every single night covered for you on Locked On MLB Game Night. It's on the Locked On MLB YouTube channel and on the audio channel shortly thereafter. But until tomorrow, you can always trust that we will be Locked On Reds every single day. So who'd you mock at 17? They against Shedeur Sanders?
Jeff, if I ever do a mock draft, I invite you to kill me.